Welcome back, Richard. It's good to see you
Morning.
once again.
Yep, good to be here. You said the other day that we're going political this week.
We
Well,
are.
not really. We're talking about politically sensitive uh,
Hmm.
topics. One was misinformation. We talked earlier, misinformation about autism. But we don't go out and select these topics ahead of time. What we did is, for some reason, this week there was a plethora of people getting punished for
Right.
some reason. I mean, we had children being, school is in session now. Kids are getting tired of it, about this time of year, the honeymoon's over. So kids are getting, so they're, some kids are getting suspended. They start to get suspended. The first grading period comes out. Kids are not doing well. They're getting angry. And so teachers are struggling. Students are getting expelled and suspended. But all of a sudden, it just seemed like there was a cluster of punishment going on.
Right.
The ICE raids, everybody's aware of the ICE raids. Now, some of the people they're grabbing might be guilty of some crimes. Nobody doubts that. But but everybody's being swept into these arrests and detentions, and families are being separated. And I mean, it's just like people are getting punished or something that they're not guilty of, which
Right.
is kind of new because you're not supposed to be punished unless you're guilty of something. Teachers have been threatened. Teachers who made comments about the Charlie Kirk assassination. They're threatened with losing their teaching certificate because they made comments that someone judged to be inappropriate. Our governor got on the news that I don't want those people teaching my children. Well, they're not teaching his children if they're in public schools, but they are allowed to comment. The last I heard, you are allowed to comment, maybe not in a classroom,
Right.
but we're not talking about classrooms. We're talking about people making comments on private social media accounts.
Hmm.
It's a right guaranteed by the First Amendment, but they're losing their jobs. So teachers are being threatened if they made what some people call inappropriate comments about the Charlie Kirk assassination. A teacher in our county lost her job because her class sang happy birthday to one of the students. Um, Students, as I mentioned earlier, students are getting expelled and they're being suspended. The homeless now are being arrested. People who are homeless. Since June of 2024, the Supreme Court said, yeah, that's okay. You can arrest homeless people. Universities are being threatened. They're being denied funds. Now, this week, Trump said, well, I'll give you more money if you do what I want you to do. So it started out as we're going to deny you funds because you're not doing what we want. And now we're going to give you money. We're going to give you extra money if what you do agrees with what we agree with. Okay.
Right.
So it just seems like all of a sudden there was this punishment mentality that
Mhm.
sort of didn't just seep in, it sort of swept locally, statewide, and nationally and internationally. This, think about Gaza, think about Ukraine. We're
Mhm.
going to punish you into submission.
Right.
God. So I don't know. It just seemed like all of a sudden punishment uh, became front and center.
Right. And we've talked many times on this podcast about our perspective of punishment. Now, we believe wholeheartedly that behaviors have consequences. If you make a bad decision, if you do something you shouldn't do, there is should be
Hmm.
a naturally occurring
Right.
consequence.
Right.
That consequence does not necessarily mean punishment.
Exactly.
If
Right.
you aren't doing your homework because you're on your phone, for your parent to take your phone so that you can finish your homework, that is not a punishment. That is a this device is interfering with your ability to do what you're supposed to do. So I'm
Right.
going to help you by taking that away so that you
Right.
can get your homework done. So that's a consequence. What it seems to be happening, as you were just saying, is everything is turning, so many things, anyway, seem to be turning towards this idea of punishment. If you don't do as I want you to do, I'm going to do this to you.
Mhm.
And oftentimes, those things that I'm going to do to you have nothing to do with what you did.
Right.
Like you said, the universities. If the universities say something that's in opposition to what some group believes,
Hmm.
the government is going to take away funding to
Right.
them. That has nothing to do with what they were saying. It's so complicated and
Right.
confusing, but it is this idea of sort of authoritarian, do what I say, and or else you get this punishment. If you do what I say, I will give you a reward. And so we're in this reward and punishment mentality right now where I I am worried about a lot of people. You mentioned teachers and students and,
Hmm.
all these people who, if you step outside of bounds, even if you don't even realize that you're stepping outside of the bounds, if you step outside of that, you're going to be punished and you're
Right.
going to be hit hard with some kind of punishment.
Hmm. Yeah. So the 2 points we want to make before we dive deeper into this is number one, we believe in consequences. We've often been accused of, well, you don't believe in consequences. No, I believe in consequences. We both believe in consequences.
Right.
Second thing is, um, we don't disagree. Illegal immigration is a problem. We're not saying it's not a problem. Illegal immigration, drugs in school, being careless or not being judicious, not being careful about what you say. Those are clearly those are problems. But is punishment the solution?
Right.
And I think that's the issue here. Nobody disagrees that that we have a problem with immigration that needs to be solved. Punishing people is not going to solve the problem.
Right.
Homelessness is a problem. None of us want to see people on the street sleeping in doorways, panhandling, bothering people as you walk down the sidewalk. Of course, homelessness is a problem, but is arresting the homeless going to be the solution? Is punishing the homeless going to be the solution? People talk about, well, let's get them off the streets and put them in institutions. There aren't any institutions. There are no, and if you do that, it's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Do you have the money to
And
do
who's
that?
going to pay that? Right. Right.
Okay. So, rounding up immigrants and putting them into alligator Alcatraz was some kind of a joke here for a while. That cost millions of dollars to do that, and it's probably not going to work. But is that the solution? Building prisons for immigrants is not the solution to illegal immigration. Okay.
Right.
So those are the 2 points we want to make. And what concerns us is that the people being punished are either marginalized, they live on the margins of society, immigrants, those who have recently arrived from other countries, the homeless, or they happen to be out of favor with the current authorities, LGBTQ. And I would put teachers in that category. Teachers have become a target. They are being scrutinized, they're being monitored, they're being investigated for things that may or may not be true. I don't know whether anybody knows whether you know this or not, but all that somebody has to do is make a complaint about a teacher. Doesn't have to be true. And you don't need to get all the details, but all they have to do is make a complaint or make an accusation, and that teacher is under investigation.
Right.
This comes at a time when we don't have enough teachers, and we don't have enough good teachers, and we don't have enough teachers at all. And now we're going to put them into that kind of spotlight and make them feel very, very, very vulnerable. Don't sing happy birthday.
Well, and we're not even talking about teachers doing if a teacher does something wrong, of course,
Absolutely.
there
Absolutely.
should be a consequence to that. But, we know of people who are under that kind of investigation, uh,
Hmm.
ex simply because, you know, a student didn't like something that the teacher said,
Right.
or
Hmm.
was embarrassed by something that the teacher said, or,
Right.
you know, didn't like the grade that they received
Mhm.
because, you know, they had these explanations for why they didn't get this
Mhm.
assignment done, and so they got a zero for it. And the parents and student think that wrong, and so they make a complaint, and now these teachers are under investigation.
Mhm.
That, again, there's a consequence for behaviors.
Right.
You don't do your work, you
Mhm.
don't get a grade for it.
Right.
Should be a consequence for that. But there can't be a consequence for the appropriate consequence. It's just you don't get to punish the teacher because the teacher applied an appropriate consequence for the student's behavior. So it's so convoluted,
Mhm.
and and this doesn't even get into the whole idea of, you know, the fundamental nature of our society, at least here in the United States. We have the First Amendment that
Mhm.
guarantees free speech. But now we have all of these examples, like you mentioned earlier about teachers who maybe posted something about the Charlie Kirk assassination, which was a horrible incident.
Right.
But
Mhm.
people had, before he was assassinated, people had beliefs about his perspectives with things. And if they posted about those perspectives after he was assassinated, they were at risk for losing their job.
That they're going to have their certification removed, that they
Right.
cannot teach anymore. Mhm.
Right. And it's, we do still have that free speech. Just as people, were very critical of other people who were killed in spectacular circumstances like George Floyd and some of these other people, you know,
Mhm.
th there were people who were very, very critical about who he was and talked very badly about him. But that was their free speech. They could say those things, whether everybody agreed with them or not. And
Mhm.
so this whole frame that is being shifted to, well, you can say whatever you want as long as it's, within this range of things, or as long as it sort of is consistent with what this other group believes, then it's okay. But otherwise, you're going to get punished for it.
That's right.
It is a very scary situation.
Right. Yeah, the First Amendment is my biggest concern. All we hear about is the Second Amendment, the right to have guns. Okay. We hear every day, Second Amendment, Second Amendment, Second Amendment. What about the First Amendment? First Amendment is you can say whatever you want. You can't yell fire in a theater. Okay, we understand all that stuff. There are things you're not allowed to say. But you are, in our country, until recently, you were permitted by the First Amendment, and there's a reason why it's first.
Hmm.
You have to be able to express yourself freely without fear. The First Amendment guarantees free speech for all, not just for some. It assures it for all, not just for Charlie Kirk, but Charlie Kirk's critics. I'm sorry, that's the country we live in. The Supreme Court years ago stated that an individual in this country does not relinquish their First Amendment rights because they teach. And it's very clear. You know that people living in this country from other countries also enjoy the First Amendment. That's another legal battle that was fought. You can be visiting here and you can say whatever you want, and it's your right to say that under our Constitution. So this is a cherished right that we should
Hmm.
guard every day. We should make sure that you have a right to speak. Also, the forum doesn't matter. Somebody said, well, Charlie Kirk had his own student. It doesn't matter. The forum doesn't matter. The Murdoch family owns Fox News. Okay, they own it. They can say whatever they want, but so can everybody else.
Hmm.
You don't just have to own the station to have First Amendment rights.
Right.
Everybody, including visitors, have First Amendment rights, and those should never be abridged.
And of course, people are going to say, well, but Fox was sued because of some things that they said.
Mhm.
They weren't sued because they weren't sued necessarily because they said something. They were sued because they were intentionally demonstrating or expounding false information
Yeah, they were lying.
in a situation where people rely on that information
Right.
to make decisions.
Right.
Um, they were sued by a company. It
Hmm.
wasn't that that the federal government came after them. It wasn't that they were being targeted because of a criminal thing. It was, I believe, it was a civil
Right.
case,
Hmm.
basically.
Hmm.
So it's there is a difference.
Well, it
Yes,
was
there
about the
are
voting
consequences to things
machines.
that you say.
Yeah, they were talking about the voting machines, and
Right,
they were presenting false information. Now, you can present false information. You're allowed to present false information, but you might get sued
by
for
the
doing that
by the voting
by
machine.
the person you're accused. It's
Right,
not the federal government that says you're not allowed to say that. It's you have lied about me, so I'm going to protect my reputation.
right,
Okay. The federal government has nothing to say about that, whether you're telling the truth or not. That's not their business. Okay, their business is to guarantee the oath that they're supposed to be taking is, I guarantee you the right to
right,
free speech. So about punishment, and this is another thing that I think that this is a key issue that we need to understand. Punishments, when we use the term, are they're aimed at reducing or eliminating a behavior. That's why we punish. Okay.
right,
But a punishment can be legal or it can be psychological. There are two ways to look at punishment. In legal terms, justice is supposed to be the same for everybody. We know it isn't, but it's supposed to be. And the goal of punishment in the legal system is not only to reduce or eliminate a behavior. If you break into a store and steal something, I punish you by putting you in jail or I issue a fine. If you're going over the speed limit, I'll punish you by taking money from you. But it's also to protect citizens. If somebody is a danger and we put them in prison, we put them in prison not just to change their behavior, hopefully it does, but also to protect other people.
right,
Psychological punishment can be positive or negative. You can do something to somebody to change their behavior, or you can take something away. So the goal here is to reduce or eliminate. It's not to protect people. Okay. So there are two different things here. The desire to punish in both cases, however, comes from wanting justice, wanting fairness, but it also comes from anger.
right,
When you have the desire to punish, it's usually out of anger,
right,
right? And that's the alarming part of the kind of punishment we're talking about.
right.
Because anger comes from divisiveness,
Mhm,
us versus them. I'm going to punish you because you're not like me. I'm
mhm,
going to punish you because you disagree with me. And it comes from animosity, and that's hatred of the other.
right,
You know, you're not. So it's divisiveness and animosity that's driving much of the punishment that we see today. The problem in America is that we are a nation that has always believed in punishment.
right,
And since colonial days, I
right,
mean, punishment, it came from the early churches that were here that believed in punishment based on religious grounds. And that has stayed with us. And we are a nation that really believes in punishment. All you have to do is look at capital punishment.
right.
We are one of the few nations in the world that still executes criminals.
Mhm,
In 2022, there were 18 executions in the United States.
mhm,
As of 2024, the US was ranked fifth in the world with 25.
mhm,
Now that compares to, Iran. China had over 1,000. Iran had 800. Saudi Arabia had 300. Iraq, 84. North Korea, 32. But we're ranked right up there, number five, with 25. Look at the countries that are doing the same thing. Not as much. So we had 18 executions in 2022. We're now in year 2025. There have been 34 executions as of September,
right.
and there have been 13
Just
alone in Florida.
right,
We now lead the nation in executions. So Florida has 13 executions in 20, there were only 18 executions in 2022 in the entire country,
Right.
right? So there's something that this resurgence of we need to punish people, and it feels as and we get this cluster of punishments that we see in the news, that we hear about teachers being punished, about immigrants.
Well,
We seem to be descending into a dark period.
well, and it's you know, you hear this from people often, you know, you look at the problem with schools, right? And what do people say? Of course, there are some people who say, well, if you put prayer back in schools, that will fix things. But if they don't say that, what they say is, well, if you put, paddlings, if you let the schools,
Right.
punish kids like that
Mhm.
again, then
Mhm.
that will sort the
Right.
situation out and schools will get
Mhm.
better. So again, this idea that if we punish, capital punishment especially, if we use that kind of punishment, that will fix these problems. And just the mere fact that we have people who go to stores and steal, get caught, arrested, spend time in prison, get out, and go steal again,
Right.
get caught, go to prison, get out, go steal again,
Mhm.
suggests that the punishment doesn't work.
Right. Right.
These the kids who were paddled at school, most of those kids that were paddled at school, or I'll say many of those kids, not necessarily most of those kids, but many of those kids were paddled repeatedly.
They were repeat offenders.
If it
Most
worked,
kids never got paddled.
right? If it worked, if paddling stopped the behavior, then you'd
Mhm.
only have to be paddled once, and you'd say,
Right.
"Oh man, I don't want to do that again." So you
Right.
don't do it again.
Right.
That alone should be evidence to suggest that punishment in and of itself isn't an effective way to change behavior. But
Right.
we live in this climate of fear right now where everybody is at risk, everybody is in danger. You have all of these other groups. You mentioned sort of the marginal groups, the groups that are sort of outside of that middle of you know the society. Um, we have been taught to fear those people so much
Mhm.
that now we are okay with punishing them
Right.
for being who they are. I don't know that I have met many. I've met a couple. I've not met many, though, people who are homeless who choose to be homeless.
Mhm.
They're not homeless because they want to be, and
Right.
punishing them isn't going to change it.
Right. I'm going to punish you because of your misfortune.
Right. Because you have a mental illness that prohibits you from being able to maintain a job
Right.
and can't get treatment because you don't have the resources to get treatment and you don't have the family to support you to give you a place to stay. What is
Yeah.
that person to do?
Yeah. Think about the cascade. We're not going to spend money to provide mental health services, and we're going to leave you on the street, but then we're going to arrest you for being on the street.
Right.
Okay. And that's sort of the dilemma. And that punishment isn't going to fix the homelessness and the mental illness problem.
No.
Okay. You're unemployable, so we can let you die on a hillside. But that's who the homeless are. They're people, these are unfortunate circumstances because most homeless, I think children are the largest group of homeless.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't ask to be homeless, but
Mm-mm.
that's who's homeless. It's mothers and children are
Right.
the biggest group of homeless people. It's not that everybody thinks it's these men on the street who are panhandling. No, no, no. The problem with homelessness is mothers and children.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So, yes, please, let's solve the homelessness problem.
Right.
But locking people up, putting them in jail, is not going to solve the homelessness any more than it has solved the mental health crisis. I mean,
Right.
what's the biggest mental health provider? It's our jails.
Right.
Okay. That's not the solution. Putting people in prison is not the solution for the problem.
Absolutely.
Capital punishment that's not why murder rates are down.
Right. So,
So,
so, so are these things a problem? Yes.
yes.
These things are problems. Of course they are problems, and we need to work to find a solution. Now, ideally, our, elected officials would work together to find a solution to some of these things. you know, going neither extreme is going to be effective.
Mhm.
The punishment stuff that we're talking about today, that's not going to be effective, but neither is let's just let it go and not worry about it and just, or just pour millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars into it.
Right. Mhm.
That's not going to answer or solve the problem either. But we have to find there's a lot of space in the middle of those
Mhm.
two extremes where
Right.
we can find a solution to some of these issues.
You know,
Oh, go ahead.
our federal government, the elected officials in Congress, have never solved the illegal. Everybody knows that there are immigrants coming into the country. The federal government, over does 20 scores of years, probably 50 or 100 years, never has never come up with a solution. They've never addressed the problem because it's a difficult problem to solve. And so the government, our government, has allowed these people to come
Right,
in every administration, including the current administration. We've allowed these people to come in, and then we punish the immigrant.
right,
Okay. And so, yes, it's a problem. Absolutely, it's a problem. But let's get our elected officials to solve the problem.
right,
Don't just arrest, don't let them in and then arrest them.
right,
Okay. Second, this capture and incarcerate creates all kinds of other problems, unintended consequences. You have breaking up families. You have, so you deport the father. Well, what if his wife and children are allowed to stay in this country, but now they have no income?
right,
Okay. So what problem has it solved, you know?
right. And then they become homeless, and now they're going to be punished for a situation that they didn't cause.
That's right.
And so that's why, we firmly believe consequences, the difference between consequences and punishment is that consequences teach.
Right.
They teach you how to solve the problem for yourself, how to prevent the problem from happening again. When a child can't do something, you can punish them for not being able to do it, which doesn't help, or you
Right.
can make sure that they know how and you can teach them how to do it so they don't have that problem again.
Right.
It's the same thing with adults. Our system is supposed to be our prison system is supposed to be quote unquote correctional,
Right.
but it rarely does provides any correction. It is punishment. It is we're going to take away all of
Mhm.
your rights.
Right.
There is no obligation, at least
Mhm.
here in Florida, there is no obligation for any of the correctional institutions to provide any remediation or
No.
education. They just don't have to do that. So that person then is let out and
Mhm.
then they're going to commit a crime again or,
Right.
be at risk for that. So consequences need to teach,
Right.
not just punish.
Right. Yeah, the idea that you can just incarcerate somebody for a year or two or three or five and that person will get better, that's not going to happen.
Right.
These are just warehouses. They're not correctional. Um, and this idea of punishment should teach something. It should change the behavior. It should be designed to change the behavior, and not just to inflict pain. And this, I think, and this is where I come back to the teachers, because I feel bad that teachers are under the scrutiny they're under today. I mean, it's become untenable. This is especially true in schools. Schools are supposed to teach. They're places where people learn things. If you suspend
Hmm.
the child's talking too much, the child's not turning in work, the child's like, whatever reason, doesn't matter. If you suspend that child, does it fix the problem? If the child is not in school, there can be no intervention.
Right.
You can kick the kid out of school, which relieves the teachers for a couple days, but it's not designed to solve the problem.
Right.
Okay. Expulsion is even worse.
Right.
If you expel a child, if you throw a kid, 12-year-old, 15-year-old out of school,
Mhm.
first of all, what crime did this child commit?
Right.
Think about it for a moment.
Right.
You are sending the child out of the educational system. That it better be for a pretty good reason
Right.
because you're about to ruin that person's life. And
Yeah.
you and I have both dealt with children who have been expelled from school in their senior year.
Hmm.
And that was a life-changing, destructive decision that that
Right.
school made. And it's happened more than once in our county.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I know we are, you know, getting close to the end of our time for this podcast, but it's so interesting that you say it that way because I was just talking to a parent earlier this week. They were talking about punishing, and they had a young child, and um, they took the child's game away. The kid is 5, I think.
Mhm.
They took the game away for a week, and was telling them, and then after they take it away for a week, then he has it for a day or two, and then he does it again, and then they take it away for a week, and I was telling him, part of teaching is giving him the opportunity to learn. And so if you take it away for a week, you're losing 7 days as an opportunity to teach him the behavior. So if
Leverage,
he
right?
if he makes a mistake, you take it away for the rest of that day, but allow the opportunity the next day. And so then the
Mhm.
next day he has it and he does well, or he has a problem again, but you can then teach again. And the amount of time that passes for learning is much more abbreviated if you're teaching that way than if you're trying to do this exaggerated long-term punishment, just like suspension. Punishing or suspending kids for skipping school it is just feels like idiocy. But it just we're just punishing to punish, and
Right,
we have to stop and get
right,
out of that mindset. So
right. And finally, just for you teachers out there, the teachers have become especially vulnerable. I hate that teachers have been targeted. They still have First Amendment rights. Just
mhm,
because you have a teaching certificate doesn't mean you don't have the First Amendment.
right,
You can have both. And does the act of kindness, singing Happy Birthday, does that warrant losing your job? Does it really warrant you to
yeah,
lose your job? Does the punishment, this pain, does it fit the crime? What if I don't know this teacher. What if she's a single mother?
right.
Now you've taken her livelihood.
Hmm.
What problem have you solved by just punishing this person? She didn't intend any harm. Was Some people might think it was thoughtless or unkind. It wasn't intended that way. She didn't intend to hurt him. The child seemed to enjoy the song. So, what are the unintended? But if you just punish, you don't solve anything. And this is in a school. If it's a school, then somebody should learn something. That's what schools are about.
Right.
So let's take these opportunities to learn, to develop the skills that maybe a person doesn't have. And so let's try to get off this punishment train.
Right.
It's not solving the problems that we have.
Right.
Um, let's we understand that there are problems. We understand that we need to fix these things, but punishing people is not going to solve the problems.
Absolutely. All right. Well, with that, I think that's it for today. We will be back next time to talk just about more things that's going on in the world around us today. So
More things, right?
until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.